The frequency and the scale of violent hate crimes have increased in recent years, not only in this country, but around the world. And that has brought an increasing focus on how hate groups use social media platforms to threaten, to spread messages of ethnic and religious hate, to radicalize opinion in impressionable people, and even share live videos of an attack over the internet. Amna Nawaz has this report.
Hate incidents are increasing in the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity for us to again condemn white nationalism. It is an opportunity that's unfortunate, but it is not unimportant. With that in mind,
on the House Judiciary Committee's agenda today, hate speech and white nationalism, and how social media can amplify both. Eileen Hershenov from the Anti-Defamation League said violence by white supremacists is on the rise.
White supremacists have been responsible for more than half, 54% of all domestic extremist-related murders in the past 10 years. And in the last year, that figure has risen to 78% of all extremist-related murders.
Seated next to Hershenov, Dr. Mohammed Abu Salha. In 2015, his two daughters and son-in-law were murdered in an alleged hate crime in North Carolina.
There's no question in our minds that this tragedy was born of bigotry and hate. And I ask you, I truly plead to you, not to let another American family go through this because our government would not act to protect all Americans.
4 months after those murders, a white supremacist killed 9 black worshipers at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina. In August 2017, a white supremacist killed Heather Heyer, who was protesting a white supremacy rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. In October 2018, a white supremacist killed 9 worshipers in a Pittsburgh synagogue. And just last month, a white supremacist killed 50 people at mosques in New Zealand.
Witness may continue.
Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler said today's hearing was prompted by that New Zealand attack and the role social media played by enabling it to be live streamed.
I would like to be clear. There is no place for terrorism or hate on Facebook.
Facebook's public policy director, Neil Potts, acknowledged his company has been criticized for allowing hate speech on its platform, but he pushed back, noting they quickly removed the New Zealand shooter's live stream.
On Facebook and on Instagram, we took immediate action towards that video. Once we were made aware, we were able to remove the video within 10 minutes.
Some expressed concern that tech companies like Facebook and Google were stifling free speech by banning certain topics. Republican Congressman Tom McClintock of California.
Suppressing speech, even the most hate-filled speech, doesn't diminish its influence, it strengthens it. I don't think you can be both. You can't be a neutral platform and at the same time exercising editorial control over content.
And activist Candace Owens testified she regularly faces hate speech and attacks as a black conservative.
And we're not talking enough about political hatred in this country. We're not talking enough about conservative activists being attacked like myself.
The European Union and Australia have taken concrete legislative steps recently, passing personal responsibility laws. If hate speech is allowed on social media platforms, it's the company's executives who are held accountable.
We turn now to someone who testified today, Kristen Clarke. She's the president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, a national civil rights organization, and she played an instrumental role in Facebook's decision last month to ban discussions on white nationalism. For the record, we asked Google and Facebook to join us. They both declined. Kristen Clarke, welcome to the NewsHour.
Thank you for having me.
So you heard us tick off a list of some of those attacks by white supremacists, but that's not the only threat to the United States, right? Was this topic worthy of a congressional level hearing today?
Absolutely. This was timely, this was necessary, and it's critical. I mean, these are issues that are life and death for people in our country and frankly across the globe. We need to understand better what's fueling hate today. And we know that it's rhetoric at the highest levels. We know it's policies that dehumanize and marginalize communities. But we also know that tech platforms play a big part in facilitating hate today. I was very pleased to see Congress take some time today to hear from Facebook and Google about what they're doing to stamp out hate. But no doubt, part of what's fueling this crisis today is the fact that so much hate generates online. This is where people are coming together, where people are going to recruit members, organize rallies, target victims, broadcast their killings. So it's really important that we get to the root of what's driving online hate today.
And those are all things we have seen already happen, right?
Indeed.
So let me ask you about this. As the hearing is unfolding and it is live streaming, the comments on the hearing have to be disabled because of all the anti-Semitic and racist remarks directed at people in the hearing. You mentioned there were representatives from Facebook and Google there. Talk to me about the responsibility of those companies, those tech platforms, to address that kind of hate and remarks.
Yeah, I mean, these online communities have really grown tremendously over time, and our laws and policies have not quite kept up lock and step. We used to have brick and mortar operations where people interacted, and we have public accommodations laws that prohibit discrimination in those spaces. But now so much commerce activity happens online, and sadly, tech companies are simply not doing enough to make sure that these are not places that are leaving communities feeling vulnerable.
Why do you think they're not doing enough? Why haven't they done more so far?
I hope that Congress will do some work after this hearing, take what they learned today and think about the new laws that they can put on the books to keep up with the 21st century world that we're living in. I think that we basically rely on tech companies to police themselves with some pressure from advocacy groups like ours. But at the end of the day, what we need are strong laws on the book that can hold tech and social media platforms accountable for the ways in which they contribute and allow hate to fester.
You don't think it'll happen without more oversight?
Not fast enough.
So you were instrumental, as we mentioned, in getting Facebook to ban those white nationalist groups. How hard was it? You were there in the room with some of those executives too. How willing are they to try to tackle this problem?
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. We approached Facebook with this issue last summer, and it took many, many months of advocacy and pushing, and other folks in the civil rights community provided an echo chamber for our concern. It was very frustrating to have a $50 billion company take the view that white supremacist activity is bad, but white nationalist and white separatist activity is okay.
They would distinguish between the two.
Yeah. And we know that these are all dangerous ideologies that are one and the same, are completely interchangeable, and all of them are ones that promote and incite violence today. These are groups who, really embrace these ideologies of hate and are out organizing and targeting vulnerable communities based on those hateful ideologies.
We should point out in the conversation about screening language and possibly censoring language, there's a real free speech question, right? And we heard that from Candace Owens on the panel today. She said, I am targeted. We don't talk about the political hatred that I face. What do you say to those arguments?
That's a totally different issue. I believe deeply in the First Amendment. It's a bedrock principle in our democracy. But at the end of the day, we're talking about conduct and activity that is not First Amendment protected speech. When you're out issuing threats to communities of color, when you're inciting violence, when you're using the web to organize hateful rallies, at some point, we are far outside the First Amendment zone, and we're now in an area that really requires that tech companies police that space to make sure that these are safe online communities for the people who use these communities. But more importantly, we need to make sure that we're not allowing online platforms to be breeding grounds for the hateful violence that we're witnessing in our communities today.
Less than a minute left now. I want to ask you, what could some of these tech companies do today? What other steps could they be doing right now that would help to address this problem?
They need to put more resources into this issue. They need more diversity around the table to ensure that broken policies or misguided policies like the one that Facebook maintained never rear their head again. And they need to partner and collaborate with civil rights organizations. We're in the trenches kind of dealing with the fallout from the hate crime crisis. We're working in the communities. We're helping victims. And they need to be sensitized to kind of, the ugly realities of hate today and understand the role that they play in contributing to that hateful environment.
Kristen Clark of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.